The moment Iarisi took the first bite, she coughed violently. Her hand flew to her throat as her eyes bulged in shock. She staggered backward, knocking over a stack of plastic chairs. The entire market erupted in panic. Women screamed, traders abandoned their stalls, and a young boy selling ground nuts dropped his tray as he stared in horror. "MamaAjuke, what did you put in this food?" someone shouted. MamaAjuke, standing behind her large soot-covered pot of jollof rice, wiped her oily hands on her apron and frowned. "Nothing is wrong with my food," she barked. "Iarisi, stop pretending." But Iarisi's face had turned pale. Her knees wobbled, and before anyone could grab her, she collapsed. Ajuke market was as noisy as ever. Traders shouted over one another, advertising their goods. The air was thick with the smell of fried akara, roasted corn, and car exhaust from passing buses. And in the middle of it all stood MamaAjuke's food stall. Everybody knew her, everybody talked about her, not because her food was the best, and certainly not because she was the cleanest. No, people flocked to her stall for two reasons. Her food was cheap, and it was always plenty. For just a small amount of money, you could get a mountain of rice, swimming in thick, oily stew, with 2 or even 3 pieces of meat. No one in the market could compete with her generous portions. But there was a problem. MamaAjuke had the dirtiest food stall in Lagos. Her pots were permanently blackened with old grease. Her hands, stained with palm oil and stew, never saw soap. If a fly landed in the soup, she would scoop it out with her bare hands and continue serving. "MamaAjuke, give me 2 wraps of amala with plenty ewedu," a sweaty bus conductor shouted. MamaAjuke, without washing her hands, dipped them into the steaming pot and scooped out the food, balancing the plate on her thick arm. "Oya take, next!" she shouted. Then, just as she was about to serve another plate, a stranger walked up to her stall. He wasn't a regular customer. He was tall, dark-skinned, and dressed in a spotless white caftan. His shoes gleamed as if they had never touched Lagos dust. His fingernails were so clean that they looked unnatural. MamaAjuke eyed him suspiciously. "You want to eat?" The man smiled. "Give me your best meal." MamaAjuke scooped rice with her bare hands, grabbed a fat piece of meat, and stretched out the plate. But the man didn't take it. Instead, he stared at her hands. "MamaAjuke," he said calmly, "if you do not change your ways, something terrible will happen to you in 3 days." MamaAjuke scoffed. "Oga, if you are not eating, leave. Don't spoil my market with your nonsense talk." The man sighed. "You have been warned." And without another word, he turned and walked away. MamaAjuke shook her head. "Rubbish! Who does he think he is?" She continued serving food. She didn't know that her nightmare had just begun. The next morning when MamaAjuke arrived at her stall, she froze in shock. Her food stall was covered in flies. Not just the small, annoying ones that normally hovered around food. No, these were large, black, and aggressive. They swarmed around her stew, covered the plates, and even crawled on her arms. She waved her hands wildly, trying to chase them away, but they refused to leave. "Ah, what is all this?" she muttered, slapping at the air. Customers approached but hesitated. "MamaAjuke, these flies are too much," one woman complained. MamaAjuke rolled her eyes. "Flies don't kill. If you want to eat, eat." But deep inside, she felt uneasy. By the second day, something even worse happened. A terrible stench surrounded her stall. It was unlike anything she had ever smelled before. A thick, rotten, stomach-turning odor. It clung to her clothes, soaked into the wooden tables, and even made passers-by cover their noses. Customers stopped coming. MamaAjuke tried everything. She burned incense. She poured perfume everywhere. She even washed the ground, something she had never done before. But the smell refused to go away. She shivered as she remembered the stranger's warning. On the 3rd day, MamaAjuke woke up to a terrible itching in her hands. She scratched and scratched, but the more she scratched, the worse it got. The pain was unbearable. Then she looked down at her fingers and screamed. Her hands had turned black and rotten, as if they had been burned in a fire. The skin was peeling, the nails were falling off, and a foul-smelling liquid oozed from the wounds. She ran into the market, screaming, knocking over baskets and traders as she rushed toward her stall. People gasped in horror. "MamaAjuke, what happened to your hands?" Tears streamed down her face. "I don't know," Somebody help me!" Then through her blurred vision, she saw him, standing at the exact spot where he had warned her 3 days ago. Her legs gave out and she fell to her knees. "Oga, please help me. I will change. I will wash my hands. I will be clean, I swear." The man smiled. "It is not too late. But next time, remember, cleanliness is life." And just like that, he vanished. From that day, MamaAjuke changed. She washed her hands, she cleaned her pots, she wore gloves. And if you visit LagosMarket today, you will see her food stall with a big sign that says, "MamaAjuke's Clean Kitchen, no dirty hands allowed." Her food was still cheap, it was still plenty, but now it was also clean. Nobody knew who the stranger was, but one thing was certain, he had taught MamaAjuke a lesson she would never forget. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. More thrilling African stories are coming your way, so stay tuned.